when I say rendering engine, let me type that. So when I say rendering engines, well, they're not engines like a car engine. They are like some lines of codes. So some mathematicians or sound optical physicists, they just work together to write down a couple of line of codes. So what those codes do for you, they analyze how the light will cast in a scene, and they create a nice image at the end for you. So there are two types of rendering engines: CPU based and GPU based. So so when you hear these weird names like V-Ray, Arnold, Mentor Ray, or RenderMan, and many more, these are just few commercial ones. So large companies like Weta or Disney, these days, Disney started using RenderMan, but they developed for their latest projects like Big Hero 6, they developed their own in-house rendering engine. So they just hired, in Weta, they hire a couple of like computer scientists, mathematicians, and optical physicists. So they work together and they create a customized rendering engine for the company. But so still many companies use these powerful rendering engines. V-Ray, it's a engine developed by two mathematicians in Sofia in Bulgaria. Arnold, a couple of computer scientists in Spain developed Arnold, and then later on it just turned out to be a really fantastic rendering engine. It's been used by Sony Pictures Imageworks for a lot of projects like Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs. So, and then it's been sold to Autodesk. So now it's part of Maya. Mentor Ray, it used to be the king of rendering like 10 years ago, but it's pretty old. It's been developed by a studio in Germany, but later on have been purchased by NVIDIA. An GPU-based Mentor Ray renderer that is called iRay renderer is in the process of development. RenderMan is one of the most powerful rendering engines developed by Pixar. So all the Pixar's animations that you've seen and you will see in the future, they are all rendered using RenderMan. It's fantastic. It's a bit it's more made for large studios. So as a small studio or a small group, you might have find it a bit difficult to get around. So these rendering engines, they rely on the processing power of your CPU. But you know that GPU processors are getting stronger and stronger. They have these days they have more processing power than your CPU. That's why, like game engines, some genius computer scientists started to use GPU for processing and creating your final rendered image. So rendering engines like Redshift or Octane. Redshift is my favorite engine. It's fantastic. Or Keyshot. They are used. I don't know if we have Keyshot installed. No, we don't. They rely on the processing power of your GPU to create. So quite the same as game engines. So Unity or Unreal Engine, or CryEngine, they all use your GPU power processing for creating real-time images. That's why GPU-based renderers are a lot faster. So with Redshift, you can create an image that looks like a a good image that is rendered using Arnold with like 1/10 of time. Okay, so first thing to decide is which rendering engine you're going to use. So I'm going to use Arnold because it's amazing, it's fast, and it is part of Maya these days. So first step is deciding about your rendering engine. Second step is to set up your rendering settings. So when I go to the window, setting and preferences, plugin manager, here you can load in your rendering engines. So again, when I say I am loading V-Ray, what does it mean? It means that I have purchased a couple of codes that are going to be added into Maya. So they are called plugin. They will be added. They will be plugged into Maya. And they will help me to generate my image, my final image. So you see that here I can load RenderMan, I can load V-Ray, which is loaded. I'm going to load Arnold M2A, which is Maya to Arnold. It's loaded as well. So I go to this rendering settings, or you can get into here from window, rendering editors, render settings, and I set the render to Arnold. So first thing to do is adjusting your renderer. So the rendering engine here, you see a couple of attributes. The first one is the most important one in terms of speed. What we are going to render, I'm going to render this scene, a pantry scene. So let me open that up. Okay, this is the scene that I'm going to render out. Okay. So just a normal shot of the pantry. So before starting rendering, I just go and adjust the render. So this is the multiplier. So by default, let me just load preset default setting. So by default it is 3. I just keep it 1, and I will let you know why. So this multiplier multiplies all the sampling. What is sampling? So when I look at under this desk here, I can see things around. Where that light come from? Light is over there. How the light could reach over there? So the light starts to bounce around. So it hits this. It hits the board and the floor and me and everywhere. It gets bounced billions of times. So slowly the light reaches to every corner. But my computer cannot afford such a complex process. So I ask the computer, I direct it in a way that it bounces the light just few times, like 4 times, 6 times. And we call that sampling. Well, sampling is a lot more complex than that, but just keep that in mind. So it just limits the amount of light rays that gets bounced. So I keep it 1. So the next attribute is diffused, which is about the colors. So I've got a lot of colors in my scene, or well, I have just diffusion in my scene. So I turn it into 3. And the next one is glossy. So it's for reflective materials. If I have glass or chrome or something reflective in my scene, I have to keep that. I have to adjust that one. I have nothing reflective in this scene, so I turn it off. Refraction. So you know that thick glass or water, if you see something behind that, it gets distorted through that. So that's refraction. The light refracts. The light breaks. When the direction of the light breaks when it gets into the another material like glass or water. But I have nothing refractive here, so I turn that off. What is SSS? Who knows that? Okay, subsurface scattering. Do you have your mobile phone torch? Yep. Can you turn that on, please? So my hand looks opaque, but when I put my finger in front of the light, you can see that the light gets into my hand, gets into my flesh. but it cannot get into this cell phone. So the subsurface scattering, in other words, the amount of the light that gets into the surface for that cell phone is 0, but it's high for my finger. So in the history of CGI, at the beginning they didn't know why skin doesn't look properly well. Then later on they realized they have to make a material that the light gets into the inside the material and that bounces inside internal layers of that material. And they developed an algorithm which is called subsurface scattering. So that's for that. I don't have any material like rubber, like human skin, like what we use for making candles? Wax. Yeah, wax. Like wax. So we don't have such a material inside this scene. So I just keep that off as well, 0. We don't have any volumetric material like fog or smoke, so I turn that off as well. So there's a ton of different other attributes. I just like motion blur, it is off at the moment. Like environmental attributes, to add like an environmental light or something, background or atmosphere, I just keep them all off at the moment. We will talk about that later. Next step, well, you have to have a project set. So I go and set a project. So my pantry scene is here. So the project has been set over there. So I set the project over there. You will see that all the rendering will go into that folder. So pantry scene / images. Let's name it. So this is like pantry scene shot 01. I use EXR format, so just use either EXR if you have enough space on your hard drive, and you want the highest quality. So EXR can carry lots of information. It can carry transparency, Z depth, different channels. It can so it's like a like multi-purpose format, and it can handle most of your jobs. If you don't have enough space, but the file size is big. If you don't have enough space, just use PNG. But just try to use EXR most of the time. Maya doesn't give you any movie. So don't expect Maya to give you a movie. So it will render your scene into an image sequence. What does it mean? It means that if your movie is like 150 frames, Maya will give you 150 images. And you will take them into After Effects or Premiere, and inside those programs you turn it into a playable, streamable, deliverable movie. So yeah. Next thing I'm gonna adjust is this frame metadata. So it's instead of single frame, I'm gonna say name.hashtag.extension. It becomes like pantry scene shot 01 dot. That hashtag is frame padding. So if I say the frame padding is 4, it becomes 0001. So name dot 0001 dot your extension, which is EXR. So it becomes pantry scene shot 1.002 dot EXR. And the frame range, so let's say this shot is like 150 frames, so you adjust it here. And the very important thing to adjust is your camera. So you see that by default the camera is perspective, but you know that I'm going to render the camera shot 1, which is this camera. I'm not going to render the perspective. And the resolution. Most of the time we use the HD resolution. So it means 1920 pixel width, 1080 pixel height. So this projector, this monitor, the television that you have at home, they all have 1920 pixel width and 1080 pixel height. And so roughly they got like 2 million pixels. So 2 million dots. So you see those dots, 2 million of them are here. But new televisions, new projectors, new cameras, they can have like 8 times more. They have like 4 times more. So they have like 8 million pixels. So they are called 4K format. But HD is fine for most of your things. I keep it down like to 540 at the moment. So just in case to render it faster. So once I'm ready, I render it. I render a larger. So maybe why not 720? Yeah, that's enough. So first, I have to decide about my rendering engine, and second, I have to adjust my rendering settings. And now I'm ready to start to do the lighting. Okay. So look at the scene. So this is the scene, and this is the camera over there looking through the floor sack. So if I look through the camera, let me turn off the NURB curves. That's not the proper positioning of the shot. Maybe I do it like that because I don't want too much of. Okay, that's better. So the shot says something. The floor sack is being positioned like right in one of the golden spots. So if I divide my scene into 3, so it's positioned properly. Yeah, not bad. Okay, so let's say my camera is ready, the scene is ready, and you want to render that. The first light I add is, so we need at least 3 types of lights. So lighting. Mari has already talked about lighting setup for you. So you start with a key light or a fill light. So you need both of them. And you end up using a rim light or a backlight. So the key light is the main source of the light in your scene. It sets up the mood. If it is like a horror or a noir scene, you might use a hard light versus a soft light, which is used most of the time. What is the difference? Hard light and soft light? Shadows. So in hard light, yeah. Shadows in hard light are sharper versus softer shadows in soft lights. So the quality of the light, the directionality of the light, all of them all of them are configured using a key light. But we need a fill light. That's a light that bounces everywhere and keeps all of your shot with a certain amount of light filled in. So, and at the end, we want to separate the character from the background. That's why we use rim light. So, I start with a sky dome as a fill light. So I go to the Arnold light. You know that if you click here, you can separate anything you want. So I add a sky dome. So sky dome is actually a sky dome. It's just a dome around your object. And you can attach, Control A, let's go to the activity. You can attach a HDR image. We'll talk about that later on. To the sky dome, so use an HDR to cast into that. But I just keep it simple at the moment. So it's a light that is going to cast from outside everywhere into your scene. So let's see what happens. I just changed the name, so let me just put all of that into models, and I put that sky dome into a group. I call it lighting. So under the lighting, I have a sky dome, and I call that fill light. So let's see what happens. I'm going to render that out. So you see that it's very noisy. Why? So the light has casted like kind of everywhere, but it's too noisy. When I select my light, and Control A, you see that the light, oh sorry, sky dome, okay, you see that the sampling is 1. It means that the light has bounced one time. So it just has touched. So I'm going to save that. Why they're the same? Okay, so the light has been just hit that corner and just died over there. But I say, okay, let's do 4 bounces. So I save this image and render that out again with 4 bounces. You see it gets softer. So less noisy. The more sampling, the higher the quality. Okay? So, but this scene looks very like daylight, but pantry is, so there's no window in the pantry. Just pay attention that I have hidden one of the walls. So there's no wall here. Why? Because I want this light to get into the pantry and cast around. The camera doesn't see that wall, that missing wall. So the camera doesn't realize. But we know we are actually just cheating that. So now I want this light to be weaker. So I'm going to save that as well. So I select the bounce light. Control A. Where's the attribute editor? Window attribute editor. Where are you? So I say you are too strong, the intensity is too high. I say the intensity would be like 1/3, and it should be like kind of like bluish, kind of like that, not too blue, yeah, like bluish, and maybe 1/4, and render that out. Yeah, that's better. So it's dark enough, but not absolutely dark. So I have a proper fill light set up. So maybe a wee brighter, maybe like 4. Okay. Next step, I'm going to save that as well. Next step, I'm going to add a key light. This is pantry, and maybe there's a like fluorescent light or a lamp up there, like your room. So next step, I go and create an area light. So the area light is there. You can see that. It's a tiny light. I make it larger. And there's a stick inside that light that shows the direction of the light. So I just rotate that. And maybe this light will be like here. So the area light gets affected by the size. So the larger, the stronger it will be. And it is a very, very weak light because of the decay. So you see that the light has a decay type is quadratic. It means that the light gets weaker and weaker when it depending on the distance with the light source. When the light gets further away, it gets weaker. So and maybe I make it like look orangish, maybe, yeah. So if I render that, you will see that nothing will change because this light is very weak. So I just when you see so when you add a light and nothing happens, just go crazy, like do something weird. Like instead of 1, I say intensity would be 1000. and render that out, I start to see something over there. So maybe I have to go further away. So it shows that this light is very weak. So I go maybe 5,000. I don't know if that's too much. Okay, that's kind of okay. That looks fine. So, but you see that it's very noisy. There's a lot of dots instead of like a nice continuum of light. So because the sampling of this light is 1, I go 4 and just render that out again. So that works better. So I have my fill light added. I have my key light added, but I need this character to be separate from the scene. So this character, there's no separation of the character. The character is not properly defined. So if we go back, so you see that rim light. This is fill light, and the key light has been added. Okay, now it's time to add a rim light. So the rim light has to follow the same logic of your key light, or so it comes from behind the character towards the camera. So I add an area light again, make it larger. So there's a nice tool. You go to panels, look through selected. Actually, I'm looking through the light now. I'm standing as the light. So I am the light. So I'm looking through the light. So camera is over there. So I look through the light, casting on the back of the character and looking to the camera. So maybe just avoid any interaction with the props. Okay, get closer. I pressed 4. Press 5 again. Okay, so, or 6 if you want to see textures, or 7 if you want to see the lights. This light I'm going to, let me just go just 6. This one I'm going to be like the same color, so I just go to the attribute editor, Control A. I'm going to make it orange and maybe just 3000. And this one I don't want it to have any shadow, because the shadow comes from the key light, not from this light. Turn that off. So let's see what happens on the engine for the rendering. So you see that the light has casted around the character. So the logic is fine, but it's too strong. So what I do, I want that part to be cast to be lit as well. So maybe I just reposition that, look through selected. Maybe I go like around that. Yeah. That's nice. Control A, too strong. I go like 1000 or like 1500. And the sampling, if you see, it's like very dotted. It's not clear enough. The sampling, I make it 4. Render that out. Yeah. That's a better separation of the character from the background. The light has casted here weirdly. I have to just solve that one. And then we're good to go. So see, fill light, key light has added, and rim light. So for separating the character from the background. I just move the light, like, just bring it forward just to avoid that make it 1000, render that out. Okay. That's much better. If you see, it is positioned in a way that it seems that the light comes from the key light, the source. That's why the logic is like is not contradictory. So once everything is alright, then you can go to the setting and turn this multiplier camera AA to 2, and you will see that the quality will get increased. I just save that one and render that. So if you compare this from the previous one, we have to wait a bit. Okay, if you compare it with the previous one, you see that it's much less noisy. So it's much better. But the rendering time, if you see, this one gets rendered in 50 seconds. This one has been rendered in like 18 seconds, and this one is like 60 seconds. So it's like 4 times slower. I'm not quite happy about this line on the floor, so I'm going to reposition the. So let's bring back down the multiplier to 1, and I'm going to reposition the rim light. So look through selected. Maybe just that's a bit further away. Let me just look through that perspective. It's too big as well. Right click here, camera 1. Or if you can activate this auto region, render region, and drag where you want to render. So I just render here. I don't. Oh yeah, that's much nicer now. So let's render the whole scene. Okay, once you're happy, yeah, I'm much happier from the previous one. So once you're happy to render your whole scene, you just go. So let's go to the render setting again. I turn this on to 2, and we are ready to render the whole movie. I just render. So you go back to the 1080p, and I just render like, let's say, 10 frames. So there's no animation in this scene, so I just want you to show how to start rendering. What I do, so just in case you see how the rendering process will go, so everything has been set. So I'm going to render 10 frames. The camera is camera shot 1. The resolution of the image size is 1080. It means it's 1920 by 1080. And the naming has been set. Everything is alright. The quality of everything has been set. So you just need to go to the rendering, and you just need to press batch render. And when you press batch render, it starts to generate the frames one after another. So and then inside After Effects, you remember how I imported the other one. So don't forget that the default frame rate in After Effects is like 30. Let me see if I can find. So this is how you import an image sequence. This is an image sequence. It's in EXR format. It's kind of the same format. In After Effects, you just need to say file import file and just grab the first one, and it says it's an OpenEXR sequence. Do you want to import it like a single movie? And then you say, yeah, I import it. So this is a different thing, just to show you how things work. Where's the animation? Yeah, there's an animation on that as well. So, but the problem is the After Effects default frame rate is 30. So you should reconfigure that. So right click on that, interpret footage, main, and say it is like, let's say a 24 or 25 frame per second based on your setting, and say OK. So then make your comp. So once you made your comp, you can right away export. So do your color grading and stuff, and then export it as a add to render queue. Export it as a, like, let's say to the go to the setting and make it like a QuickTime, and the format will be like H264. So that's a format you can deliver for your assignment. Okay, and then specify the place that is going to be saved, and then press render. So you render image sequence inside Maya, and you export the movie out of like in After Effects or Premiere. That's how it works.